everyone. Welcome to Queer Lodgings, the queer-led podcast about everything Tolkien. I'm Leah, and I'm here with my usual co-hosts, Alicia
Hello.
and Grace.
Hello.
Thank you so much for joining us today. After a long time away, we're back. Yay! After sweating out there, riding our horses in the sun all day, let's grab an icy cold beverage and head into the anachronistic movie theater to chat about a relatively recent Tolkien adaptation 8 months after the fact. Like I said, it's been a very long time away, and it's been a weird year. I'm sorry, you guys.
It has been a weird year, and I feel like the last 3 of our episodes have been started with, "Hey guys, we're back."
We're back. We keep doing it somehow.
Listen, if the BBC can do it, so can we.
Yeah, there you go. Well, anyway, we're really keeping up with things over here. And today we have a very special guest with us. Janet Brennan Croft is a recently retired associate university librarian at the University of Northern Iowa. She is the author of the Mythopoeic Award winning War in the Works of J.R.R. Tolkien, the co editor of one of the podcast's favorite sources, Perilous and Fair Women in the Works of J.R.R. Tolkien, which is celebrating its 10-year anniversary. Yay. And has written on many, many, many authors, TV shows, and movies. She has edited the scholarly journal Mythlore, another one of our favorite sources, since 2006, and has the extremely cool distinction of being the only Tolkien scholar to canonically exist in the South Park universe. Welcome, Janet.
Thank you.
Yay! So we could talk to you about a bunch of different things because you have done many, many things, including being the guest of honor at the Mythopoeic Society's most recent seminar, which Queer Lodgings presented at. Just hint, hint, that's what we've kind of been up to. But we brought you on today to talk with you in your capacity as a script consultant for The Lord of the Rings, The War of the Rohirrim, the recent anime adaptation directed by Kenji Kamiyama. And of course, we'd love to talk to you about the film as a fan and as a scholar, but I think it's very cool to be able to talk to you as somebody who was involved in the process of making it.
Well, thank you. I appreciate the opportunity.
To kind of get things started, can you tell us what your official credit is? What was the scope of your work?
Okay, I believe I was credited as Tolkien Expert. That's what they told
That's
me to
cool.
put on. Yeah, I didn't stay long enough to see it the last time I watched it.
I did.
You
Every
did.
time. And then
Every
I'm like,
time.
"Whoa, Janet, I know
Hey,
her."
Janet, we
I
know
get very
you.
excited every time I see it.
Very cool.
Well, thank you. I just went on IMDb today to make sure that gets added to my list of stuff.
It's so cool that you have an
Cool.
IMDb.
I know, it's fun. But anyway, so my job was to go through each of the scenes in the screenplays and each element on the maps and determine the source of each of those elements. Names, characters, items, places, bits of dialogue, action, any of that. Was it in The Lord of the Rings, including the appendices to which they had rights, or did it come from elsewhere in the Legendarium, or did it exist only in the Peter Jackson film verse, or was it original
Oh.
to this screenplay? I even went down to the level of things like were rabbits known to exist in Middle Earth? Well, yes, we all know they did, but just to confirm, here's where they're cited in the text. So
Okay.
the main purpose of this was to determine if they were working with material that they had legal copyright to. So that's the basic function of my job. But then I also looked at the added material pretty closely to see if it aligned with Tolkien's themes and chronology, or if it had precedence in the legendarium somewhere. So if my name's going to be on it as Tolkien expert, I'm going to bring all my expertise to it that I can.
Absolutely. Yeah, it's a little bit like fact checking in a way, or
Very much. I think
yeah.
that's probably why it appeals to me as a librarian. That kind of yeah, and an editor is that fact checking.
Oh, right on. Well, I know we can't get into too much of the specifics because of contracts and NDAs and things, but can you tell us a little bit about what your approach was like? Like, what were you asked to do, and what were your methods in researching and giving feedback in that fact checking, I guess?
Yeah. Well, my own first step for any project like this is to read the script and highlight any of the items I want to follow up on, especially flagging things that seem particularly anachronistic. So that's just like a first pass through the script. This stands out, this stands out, this stands out. And then I generally start my research on the sources in Tolkien. So for this script, I very carefully read the Helm Hammerhand story in the appendix, along with the surrounding material on the Rohirrim, and then I went back through the Rohan chapters, and then I turned to the history of Middle Earth for the composition history. They made a really good choice with this story because it's very self-contained in the appendices. There are
Mm.
very few references in the Lord of the Rings text to Helm. Maybe a few references to Helm in the layout of the Hornburg there, and that's about it. Now, the only real red flag that I ran across that I need to look out for was some details about Rohan and the Erlingast that appear only in the Battle of the Fords of Isen in Unfinished Tales, and they didn't have rights to that, so I had to
Mm.
look out for that. And according to Christopher Tolkien's commentary in The Peoples of Middle-earth, this story was originally set down in pretty much its final form, with only a few minor changes before publication, and then it was never returned to later. So this is not something that Tolkien niggled with forever after he wrote it out, like the Galadriel or the orcs or something.
Feel like it must be the only thing he didn't niggle with.
Oh no,
One of the
almost.
some of the rare examples. Yeah,
Well,
yeah.
he didn't come back and mess around with Aragorn after he wrote Lord of the Rings. Aragorn,
Mm.
done.
Mhm.
I mean, there may have been stuff that changed during the writing of it, but he didn't come back to Aragorn.
Mm.
But yeah, this was a nicely self-contained little story. So that part was simple. And then with the maps, I needed to see if the material was on the maps in the Lord of the Rings, or if the place name was listed in the index, or if it had come in somewhere else, like maybe come in from maps in the history of Middle Earth, or the
Mm.
Pauline Baines map, or maps for games and movies. And I had to like look at, was it in the original maps that were in like the early version of Lord of the Rings, or the more recent maps that you see in more recent editions. So there was a lot of, going back through the library here and seeing, where did this name come from? Where does it first appear?
Oof. So, like, different versions of it too. It's like,
Yeah, yeah.
oof.
For the maps, I find that necessary because there have been some changes.
Yeah, I wasn't even thinking about the different versions of the maps and the
Yeah,
different version of the text.
yeah.
Totally.
Oh,
And I forget what it is, but there is something that appears like in the Pauline Baines map for the first time. So,
Oh, yeah.
how does that count? Yeah.
Mhm.
But then after that kind of step, then my research is going to take me into primary world reference sources like books, web resources on things like trees or falconry or feudalism or the history of swords and armor. Because Tolkien's world was one of realism overlaid with fantasy. The practical deals came straight out of our primary world, and you can't break the laws of physics in Tolkien's world. So, I look these things up because he based it very much in reality. So, a prime example of the sort of material research I did. So you'll notice that Hera, and I probably don't pronounce their name quite as perfectly as they do in the show, but she has a small portable telescope or eyeglass, which is important to the plot in several places in several different ways. And when I saw that in the script, I flagged that to investigate because spyglasses and other technology involving lenses, I couldn't recall that they'd ever been specifically mentioned in Tolkien's works. So first I have to, being a librarian, and can I trust my own memory? No, I've got to look, I've got to check. So I do that. Now, as far as I can determine, technology involving lenses was not mentioned by Tolkien, but there's glass. Glass existed in the Shire, at least. Bag End is well provided with windows, and elsewhere, other places. So this called for kind of a deep dive into the science and technology of Middle Earth. I first speculated that elves would probably have an understanding of the science of optics, and they do have many words that include an element that translates as glass. But given elvish eyesight, they would be unlikely to need to develop, a portable spyglass
sure.
or
Or
eyeglasses.
glasses,
Yes, exactly.
like all of us wear.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. What do elf eyes see, Janet? Well,
Y
uh, about 3 inches in
with
front of my face.
without contacts, literally, like, right about
Yes,
here in front of my face.
exactly. Yeah. Now dwarves, on the other hand, would be more likely to develop magnifying lenses for fine metal and gem work. And from that, it's a very short step to spyglasses.
Oh,
And they'd
yeah.
also be more likely to make and sell these sorts of things, either as a tool or as a toy. In our primary world, so what I found out was the small portable refracting telescope was developed sometime in the early 1600s. But lenses are well established in the later Third Age in the Jackson verse. Elrond has a telescope, Balin has a jeweler's loupe, Radagast has a microscope. So within the existing movie verse, a small spyglass was totally acceptable. But I
Oh,
thought it
yeah.
was very unlikely that it would have been manufactured in Rohan. That's not the sort of thing that they would do in Rohan, especially in this time period. So what I suggested was it's acceptable, but maybe it ought to look like a dwarvish artifact. Maybe, if there's any recognizable sort of decoration on it, it gives the backstory to this thing that would otherwise stand out as this isn't right. This
Mm,
doesn't fit. So that's kind of the added value I was bringing. That wasn't a copyright issue or anything like that, but it was something that like I want to keep people in the world of this movie. I don't want people to be bounced out by some sort of suspension of disbelief, you know?
yeah, totally.
Yeah. hmm Yeah. So other things like researching the great eagles and their primary world inspirations, that was another fun rabbit hole. How long did Tolkien's great eagles live? Well, you look at something like the nature of Middle Earth. Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
the length of their life would vary all over the place.
Yeah.
Well, what's the maturation age for our primary world golden eagles? So I looked that up. I looked up some books on falconry to research the whole thing with the lure, all that kind of stuff. So it's a lot of fun, actually.
That's very cool. Yeah. I don't know if you can get another too specific, but like that spyglass is a really great example, I think, of hinting at kind of unconsciously like how much like bigger the world is.
Mm,
How did she get a spyglass? That means they must have some interaction with dwarves or perhaps with other men who have interactions with dwarves. And so
yeah,
it kinda opens things up a lot more. It's one of those, like, little what is it? The textual ruins that Tolkien kinda seeds things with, you know?
right, right. You see that, you start thinking about trade routes, trading posts, that kind of thing. The sort of thing that in Pratchett, he would have this, and then you'd get a whole backstory and a whole nother novel out of it at some point.
Yep, yep, you get a lot of footnotes about it too. Yeah,
Yes. hmm
yeah. Oh, that's very cool. Well, did that kind of, like, translate like, is there, like, another example of something like that, that you kind of did, like, a rabbit hole in, like, beyond, like, the eagles, like, the horses or anything like that?
Oh, there was something about horses. So I'm not an expert on horses. I'm not a
Mm.
horsewoman. I haven't ridden a horse since Girl Scouts, and that was a very long time ago. So when I don't have the expertise in a particular subject, and I don't think I can develop quite enough just by doing some research, I say you ought to call in an expert on this. And I said that about horses because I'm reading this and saying, could a horse carry two full-grown persons? A mare carry two full-grown people and go at a gallop that long? Could a horse jump that far? But
Could a
yes,
horse walk down those stairs?
yes. Could a horse charge? Could a cavalry charge down that steep of a slope? Well,
Right.
whether they called in an expert or not, I said this is kind of beyond me being able to say whether this is possible or not.
Well, in the world of the movies, at least for the slope,
Yeah.
Yeah,
it worked.
Jacksonian horses can charge down a slope that steep.
Oh, okay. Yeah, yeah.
Well, and down is very different than up because up is no problem unless up curves, which is why old school firehouses
Mm,
have the fireman's pole because the grain for the horses was stored on the top floor. And so if there was a straight staircase, the
Oh,
horses that pulled the wagons, fire wagons, would just go straight up the stairs. And so they needed a spiral staircase to slow the horses down. And then they needed the fireman's pole in order to be able to get down the stairs as humans
quickly.
fast enough to go do the things.
Wow,
mhm.
that's funny. Well, in terms of, like, another cool thing that you have done, I don't know if we can talk about this, but you are also credited in the Hobbit films. Was it a similar sort of role, or what was the difference between working on something like this and your work for the Hobbit films?
Mm. So it wasn't too much different in my working approach.
Mhm.
whether it was anime or live action. I worked from the script, maybe a map, so it didn't really matter if it was live action or animated. I guess I could comment on whether would a live action person be able to do this? Would an animated person be able to do this? But there wasn't really in so much detail in the script for the action scenes that I could really say that. I would see a new version of the script after each round of revisions, and I could say, this seemed to work, or this didn't seem to work, or here's a new problem that's arisen. I also worked on some games. I worked on Middle Earth, Shadow of Mordor, and Shadow of War, and some other associated titles. These were a little bit different. Some of the materials I saw were different. For these things, I might see things like character sheets and overall plot summaries and like snippets of dialogue. Yeah, I'm not familiar enough with games to tell you what that kind of scripted bit is,
Mm,
but
mhm.
that's the kind of thing I would see. So the materials I saw were a little bit different, but I was doing the same sort of thing. Is this material that you have rights to, and then does this really, to me, seem to work within Tolkien's world or not?
Yeah, does it fit? Yeah.
I had
Yeah.
completely forgotten that you had worked on those games because my god, are those games polarizing.
Yeah.
There are a lot of people who, like, they love the games, they love the gameplay, they love, like, the additional visibility you get on, like, orcs and stuff like that, and people think that's really cool, and then there are, like, pedantic asshole like, Tolkien assholes who get in there and are like, "I don't think Celebrimbor should be able to haunt somebody like this."
Yeah.
It's me. I'm the pedantic Tolkien asshole.
Well, there was a lot of back and forth, and it's well, I kind of ran across this with Jackson stuff too. The authors want to do something, and it's, well, I suppose if you stretch things in a certain way, this could work. But an author doesn't want to kill their darlings.
Mm,
So, yeah.
yeah, that's valid. That's actually kind of a nice segue into a question that I had. Like, you had access to different kind of materials working on the games, which is a very different process, it sounds like, from the films, which is kind of like, for all of its being a really collaborative form of art, it can be very isolating. It's like everybody's like working in their own little departments. And if you can't see what everybody else is working on, I kinda had, like, a speculative wish sort of question for you, like, what kind of materials or what kind of access would you have loved to have been able to have working on War of the Rohirrim? Like, certain departments or, like, people that you could talk to or have access to? Like, what kinds of different materials do you think would have been interesting or valuable to you as you were working?
Yeah. Yeah, that's a really good question. I think for this one in particular, it would have helped to see some sketches of locations and setting. Because from the script alone, I had a hard time picturing some of the elements of the layout of the Hornburg and the surrounding landscape pictures. Like where does the tunnel come out? I can't quite
Mhm.
picture where this is happening. And I found myself going back to the Jackson movies several times to try to help me with the visualization because this is, I mean, it's in the Jackson verse basically in many ways. So having that kind of sketch might have helped me. Sometimes I felt it would be helpful to be in the room with the scriptwriters to say,
Mm,
why did you write this scene or character the way you did? Where are you trying to go with this? And maybe, help brainstorm a new solution to something that bothered me rather than writing and crickets because we're not interacting directly. I'm interacting through the lawyer.
right.
So yeah, there are times when I thought, well, this would be a lot quicker if I could just talk to the people writing it and saying, what are you trying to accomplish? Am I not understanding what you're trying to do? What are the constraints I don't know about? Is there something else that's going on that I don't know about?
Yeah, like, is it like a production, like, budget thing? Is it a like, what's kind of going on? Like, I sort of feel like in a difference between, like, animation and live action, obviously, is in animation, you're somewhat constrained by the laws of physics because of believability, right? But you can get a lot
You can
done in
stretch more.
animation. You can
Yeah.
stretch a whole lot more in animation that you just cannot do in live action because even with the advent of CGI and stuff, there's just some stuff that you just can't believe that
Oh,
happened.
yeah, like Legolas running up blocks as they're falling down?
So yeah, 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 exactly. Or, Legolas flipping up over onto a horse. I feel like in a lot of, like, things that change in, like, scripts is sort of like, "Oh, well, we can't afford to do that." It's like, well, in animation, can you afford to do that? So, I'm always kinda curious about, like, where these sorts of choices are made along the line. Like, who's the guy making the particular choice, and is
Mm,
the writer having to respond to that or something like that?
right. Yeah.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
did I think it's interesting that you just mentioned that you were communicating through the lawyer. In my head, when I picture someone, like, kinda consulting during an editing process, my picturing of that is working directly with the team in some capacity. Like, I can only imagine how frustrating a game of telephone that might turn into at certain points.
Yeah, yeah. It's been that way for all the projects I've done.
Hmm.
And I don't know enough about how Hollywood works. If I was in the room with writers, would I have to be in the union? Would it have to be an entirely different set of roles or something?
Mm.
If I am hired on as a consultant, I'm kept separate from
Mhm.
all of that kind of thing.
Mhm.
So, yeah.
Yeah, different contract, different pay rate,
Mm,
all
mhm,
that stuff.
yeah.
Yeah, Leah can actually, speak a little bit intelligently about that. It's not something that often comes up, but it is sort of what Leah went to school for.
Yeah, once upon a time, long ago,
We we
3,000
we
years ago.
we were in art school hell for two very different things.
It's true. It's true.
Mhm.
Well, to be honest, some of the way that Hollywood works is the reason why I'm not working in film, so it's sort of like, feel free to air your grievances here, Janet, if you need to. This is a safe space.
Mm,
But yeah, I always kind of wonder, like, you'd think that having access to more people and more departments would help you do your job better, but capitalism
yeah,
gets the
yeah,
way.
yeah, it's true. I am hired as a consultant. I'm not hired as a creative part of the creative team or anything like that. So, yeah.
Yeah, but if you're being hired specifically to, like, check over, like, copyright and, like, historical/physical feasibility, like, seeing character designs and costuming and all of that is relevant to what it is that you're doing, says the person who keeps screaming about rings of power and that particular shade of blue that the Numenorians wear.
Oh my gosh. Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah,
Yeah.
you'd think that would be a useful thing, but again, it's, yeah, baffling to me. Well, yeah. So, what point in the process of the script, I guess, are you pulled in to be the credited Tolkien expert? How, I guess, is it like in pre-production?
Well, as far as I can tell, I get called in when the script is pretty far along.
Mhm.
I think one of the projects, it was like this is the third draft or something like that. So they've got things pretty well shaped where they think they're going to go with it. They may have already done things like character design, location scouting, casting, background painting. I don't know, but all I see is a script that is in, not necessarily final, but relatively polished form. And then I'll see, another 2 or 3 iterations of that script working back and forth with what I've said, and I guess what other people have been saying elsewhere in the process as well. Yeah, I really enjoy it, and I look forward to it whenever I get a chance to do it, although it takes up a lot of time whenever I agree to do one.
Yeah.
I'm sure it does.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's really interesting and painstaking work, and I really feel invested in the final product,
Mm,
especially when I can see my suggestions making it better.
that must be a very cool feeling.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Mhm.
I was gonna say a natural, like, extension of this is how do you feel about how the War of the Rohirrim turned out?
Hmm. Well whenever I have watched a film I've been involved with, I start in this state of extreme high nervousness, like I'm going to faint or something, because I don't necessarily see the final script before it goes to
Mm,
production. And again, as things are being filmed, as things are being created, the script can still make further changes. What I see, they may say it's the last one I might see it, but it may not be what gets filmed. So there's always an element of surprise. What am I going to see? And when I see my name at the end, am I going to be proud, or am I going to want to like slink out of the theater and pretend this never happened? But I thought this script did a really good job of filling out a Middle Earth story in a believable fashion, adding a great deal of emotional depth. It seemed to be well based in real world cultures, but it foregrounded a potential women's role that is often hidden or forgotten. If it lacked anything, it was the courage to deal with the race question, which I think we may be looking at.
Mm.
It has to come up when you're pitting blonde, blue eyed Rohirrim against dark Dunlendings. But otherwise, it felt very complete in and of itself. It felt like the story wrapped up tidily, pointed directly to later developments with Saruman and so on, but left room for your basic Adventures of Hera and Olwen fan fiction. So yeah, I was proud to see my name at the end of this one. I thought,
oh,
yeah,
that's great.
okay,
That
yeah,
is
that's
great.
me. You're allowed to stand up and cheer.
Oh, yeah.
I was just curious about if there were any times where, as you got a further draft of a script, there was something in it that had changed since earlier draft that necessitated another, rabbit hole deep dive.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, that happened pretty frequently. Like,
Mm,
a new location would be added or something, and I'd have to go and research all the names and things connected with that. So yeah, yeah. It wasn't just, yeah, you checked off the box I gave you. No, there's new stuff I have to look at.
I've referenced this before on another episode, but just so it is also captured here, they did have permission from Christopher Lee's wife to use his likeness and voice in this movie, and they pulled the voice from the previous movies he did. It was not AI generated or anything like that, and I think that is so fucking cool. And like, one, that his wife agreed to do that, and two, that his widow agreed to do that knowing how happy it would make him to be in another Lord of the Rings film.
yeah.
I remember when they dropped that bomb that Christopher Lee was going to be in this movie at Dragon Con last year, and everyone was like, what the fuck? Did you dig up his body? What? This doesn't seem
A-
ethical.
This doesn't seem
Adds
right.
adds to the overall metalness of Christopher Lee.
I think that matters a great deal too in this era of generative AI slop and everything,
Yeah,
that there are examples of how to do it properly and ethically and with the correct buy-in, and to use the technology in ways that is effective instead of gross.
yeah,
Mhm.
Agreed.
Very much.
yeah. Well, let's kind of get into developing your kind of review as like a fan and as like as Tolkien scholar, and I guess like and what all three of us kind of thought about seeing it. Yeah, it's great to hear that you are proud to have your name attached to it because I really enjoyed this. I feel like it was, like you said, a really a strong and like well developed and had a like really surprising emotional depths to it, and a really tidy story that kind of didn't really leave a lot like hanging. And I feel like you pointed out, that's the story of Helm in the appendices. There's not really a lot to draw out there. And it's kind of like a cool and interesting story to kind of hone in on because there is the unnamed daughter and there's so much potential to kind of draw out there and really get into and explore. So yeah, I've heard some folks kind of be like, "Oh, why didn't they make Helm like the main character?" And I was like, "'Cause no, why would you do that?" Like, for one thing, he dies, and
Yeah. Yeah.
another,
What's his arc?
yeah,
Where's
what
the
he has
yeah,
no arc really, and like,
yeah.
I feel like there's so much more potential to explore what they did with Hannah, and
Yeah.
Oh, speaking of pronunciations of Hera,
It was all
uh,
over the place.
it was a little all over the place, but, like, I know a lot of people got really weirdly
Oh
hyper
my god.
focused or hung up on the little diacritical mark over the E of Hera, and I'm kind of like, "Calm down, everybody. It's okay." But what I don't know if you had any thoughts about that, Janet.
Oh my god, do you really wanna open this fucking box again?
Well, yeah, yeah, I know there was a lot of discussion of the name after Chris Vaquero's paper at the OMS, and the name, of course, was one of the things I looked at. It's you look at the name and you say, okay, this is one of Tolkien's names. This is a name he never used. This is an invented name. If it's an invented name, does it pull phonemes from his languages? Does it fit? And that was, I said, well, of course, people are going to look at it and say, oh, Hera, Greek goddess, that kind of thing. And well, you want it to start with H. It's a cool name. It fits with the other names in Rohan. So how do you make it fit? Now, I there were a couple different spellings that went by in different scripts. I don't focus on that. I was more interested in the sound of it. I am not a Tolkien language expert. I always say, go talk to a Tolkien language expert if you want to have a passage in another language or something. But, I did find, for example, some Old English elements and that combination of syllables meaning pleasant and noble. So it did kind of fit. But yeah, I am not so much of a Tolkien language nerd that I care where the accent went.
Or what way the accent was facing.
For what
Yeah,
way
now that it
it was.
exists, I care as an editor that people using it get it right. But
Get it right. Yeah,
yeah.
that's fair, that's fair. For me, and I'm also, like, a lot of the linguistic stuff's, like, kind of gets me in the weeds, but it sounds Tolkienian, and it sounds Rohirric, and I'm kind of like, it's close enough that I feel like
Mhm.
I think it works fine. It's fine. Don't worry about it, you guys.
Yeah,
I think
exactly.
it also helps for people just to know that it was thought about a great deal through the production process. There were different spellings considered. It was looked into as to whether it fit, like you said, in a sort of a phoneme way in the culture of Rohan. Like all of that was there because I think it's very easy for us as we're consuming things to go, well, obviously they didn't think of that and sort of be dismissive of it, especially after the fact when we weren't the ones involved in making the soup. And I think it's always helpful to temper that instinct a little bit because in reality, all of these things were so carefully thought of. And it's okay if there were different approaches. And we can debate it later, but really, we just need to make sure we spell it right. I agree.
Yeah, now that it exists, yes.
Yeah, I do remember when Hera's name was first announced, and I'm Facebook friends with both Nelson Gehring and also Jason Fisher, who are two big Old English guys who got into a like relatively heated conversation on Facebook about whether this was a logical and like name to choose for this character, and I find that sort of like shit so interesting because I'm really interested in like etymology and stuff like that. So watching two
Hmm.
linguists who both are pretty firmly grounded in what Old English actually is, like getting into like a dick slinging contest about this like name was delightful for me.
Yeah. But yeah, I can't know who else they might have consulted about this. So yeah.
Mhm. Ugh, it's so funny.
Hmm.
Well, yeah, what did you guys Alicia and Grace, like, what was your kind of, like, your overall sort of feeling about it?
Just the part where this is being presented, in Eowyn's voice and everything too, as this character who you're not going to find in the records of history,
Mm,
but whose life clearly touches all of the things that we have in those appendices in the history of Middle Earth. I thought was a brilliant construction from the start because it cuts off all of the well, that's not the way it was in whatever, and that's not in the appendices, and like she should like, no, we just stated up front, you're not going to see it
Yeah.
because that's not the story we're telling.
Yeah.
We're telling a story that didn't get recorded, but that you have the breadcrumbs to follow. And having been a human being on the internet on the last 5 years in Tolkien spaces, let's say, I found that actually to be a pretty refreshing take. And I wonder if there was some thought of being able to head off some of that sort of controversial take
Hmm.
early on, just being able to look at the reception of other adaptation things in Tolkien and outside of Tolkien, where women get to be centered and fandom has schisms about it.
Yeah, and it gets to either choose to melt down about it or to be cool about it.
Mhm.
Yeah, what did you think, Alicia?
I can't answer anything shortly. You all know this about me
We
now.
know that.
I I know, right? I went into this like so apprehensive because as I'm sure I've also mentioned, I went to art school and therefore I do not like anime because I had anime foisted upon me when I
Oh.
was in art school and everyone was like, "Oh my god, you've got to watch Cowboy Bebop. It's the best fucking thing that's ever happened." And I was just it was not for me. And so I with the exception of like Sailor Moon, after school when I was in high school, I was 100% like just off the anime train. And I was like, this is an interesting choice.
Mm,
But I love animation. Like I really wanted to go into animation when I was little. It was like the third or fourth job I ever wanted to take cuz I like drawing and like I love Disney movies and who wouldn't want to go into animation when you're 6 years old and don't understand how they work you like indentured servants. So I was happy about like getting a modern animated take of this because I have not seen any of the older animated movies all the way through, and other than Where There's a Whip, There's a Way being an absolute banger, I have not been super impressed with what I have seen. So I was like, "Oh, well, maybe this will be an animated movie that I like. I will give this a chance." And the more I heard about it, the more excited I got, and I was like, "Oh my god, I have been so disappointed with Rings of Power. Is this going to be an adaptation that I actually like?" I need to temper myself. I don't wanna go into this with, like, too high of hopes because I don't think that my heart can handle being let down again. And I wanted to see it so much. We went to the theater, which is a huge thing for me. I have a corn allergy, so going into the theater often makes my throat close up because I can't be around
God,
popcorn. So I'm like, I'm
yeah.
risking my life to go see
Risking
this
your
fucking
life.
movie in the theater. And the Rohan theme started at the very beginning, and I immediately started crying.
Yes, me too. I was so surprised. Like, sorry,
The
not to interrupt you, but like, I was like, I heard the theme and I was just like, immediately, like, went back into like, teenager Leah watching the Lord of the Rings
Oh god,
movies, and
yeah.
I was just like, oh my god. Okay, sorry, go on.
I I'm gonna interrupt now too. I did not get to see it in the theater, but I did see the trailer for it in the theater, and I'm not an anime girly. I barely like animated things.
I guess I have to wave the flag over here.
I No, that's fine, that's
I'll be
fine.
the anime girly.
I so excited seeing the trailer and, like, hearing the music, seeing the imagery and everything. I started literally, like, flailing in my movie theater seat, and it's one of those ones that's a recliner, right? And so I'm there with my feet reclined, and I'm just, like, kicking my feet in excitement like I am 4 years old, and my flip-flops came off. I was so excited, and I was
Yay!
really surprised by how excited just for the trailer I was. But as it turns out, this just continues my trend of enjoying animated things as long as I know at least one person who worked on it. So
Fair enough.
I say, having
Sure.
grown up in a town where Romeo Muller, the scriptwriter for the Rankin Bass special, was Santa Claus, and I am currently wearing my Ursula shirt because Pat Carroll lived in town too. So like the animated things that I tend to like, I don't know whether it happens to be because there's some sort of like, I don't know, parasocial thing there, or if it's just like, no, I know I recognize the artistry that went into it and I've thought about that a little bit more. And so I receive it a little bit differently.
Mm.
But I like.
Cool, cool, cool.
To wrap up my long ass story time, I loved it. I absolutely loved it in a way I did not expect to. That was unforeseen, but so welcome. So welcome
Yeah.
to me.
Oh, I'm
Mm.
so glad to hear that.
It was like, oh God, when Breath of the Wild got released, Zelda nerd time, and I played Breath of the Wild, and I was like, it's fine. It's a pretty game, but whatever. And then Tears of the Kingdom got released, and I play Zelda for story, and Breath of the Wild has very little story. Tears of the Kingdom has a lot of story.
Tell a
And like the
story.
first 15 minutes of Tears of the Kingdom, I was snot faced, ugly crying because I was like, this is what I want Breath of the Wild to be. And I got like little like shades of that. Like, oh my God,
Mm.
I don't have to hate all adaptations anymore. I don't have to turn into I love you so much, David Brotman, but David Brotman about about all the Peter Jackson movies. Like, oh, I don't have to be an adaptation hater. I it's just this one adaptation I don't like. I can like other things, and it's fine.
But well, Leah, you said you like anime. I'd be interested to
I
hear
do.
how does this stack up to, well, I mean, Miyazaki, but anybody else.
Oh, yeah. I mean, I feel like there were some really arresting and beautiful visuals that like surprised me. I feel like, and I don't know why they surprised me, but they were very, very welcome. Really arresting and emotional visuals, like, on the line of, like, Miyazaki and these other directors, and, like, I feel like there were some really beautiful moments that, like, really stuck with me and really, like, again, sort of hit, like, the emotional depths that I don't know why I was not expecting them, but I was surprised by them nonetheless. And I feel like the mixture of, like, the 3D landscape and the 2D animation was sometimes it didn't quite work for me. It was a little felt a little bit out of place, but I feel like the landscape paintings themselves and, like, the backgrounds were gorgeous, absolutely beautiful.
Yeah.
Mhm.
And there were some really cool, strong character designs that I mean, we might have to talk about how some of them kind of veer into racist territory and into stereotypical territory, which comes with the world of Peter Jackson's Lord of the Rings, right? Like, it's sort of
So
like
it also comes from anime though, because like some of those character
yeah,
archetypes are definitely present in Miyazaki.
yeah,
Mhm.
yeah,
Tim's been doing a watch through of all the Miyazaki films, and I've caught bits and pieces of them here and there, and yeah,
Yeah, you've got these characters that I started calling grotesques that are,
yeah,
yeah, yeah,
yeah, yeah. That can be a little hit or miss, I think, for me, and a little bit disappointing. I can see the legacy of like, I feel like it's a really strong, like, contender in, like, the tradition of anime, and in going into Middle Earth, I feel like that's a really big swing for a movie to make, and I really appreciate it when movies take big swings, especially adaptations, and I feel like the design of Hera, it's very much in line with, like, the kind of like Bishoujo, like
mhm,
pretty girl sort of style, like Sailor Moon. But I don't know, like I felt like her character design was it felt like very, very real and very, very grounded and not like nothing felt very like fanciful, you know? And I feel like it can be really easy to do that in animation. And I feel like everything felt very grounded and very weirdly, like, lived in terms
yeah.
of in terms of the visuals.
She didn't feel like a total Mary Sue, you know? She
Yeah,
felt
yeah.
realistic. Yeah. Hmm.
yeah,
She was a good audience surrogate.
Yes, but not a total blank slate.
Like you talked about arc, but like she is our entry point and then is one of the only characters who survives this period of history, this event in Middle Earth history. So
Yeah.
she is a good audience surrogate for the through line, and it feels solid to me in a very refreshing way.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was really refreshed by her character and again, like the depths of her emotions. Like I sort of feel like there could have been a temptation to make her younger and also to make her more like fiery redhead or like stereotypical like strong female character, which is like a dude with boobs or like something like that where it's like no like kind of emotional sort of arc, but she felt very much like when Eowyn says that, like, she does what she wants and she is wild and free, it's like, I believe her, and I also believe, like, these relationships that she has with her family and that are very grounded, and she has this emotional relationship with her people and her society. Like, I kind of felt like she has this sense of deep communal connection to everybody in a way that didn't feel like her, like, choosing to be independent and choosing, going off and kind of having adventures. It didn't feel like a petulant child being like, "I just wanna be free. I just wanna be free of all my constraints," and stuff like that. It was kind of more like, "This is how I exist in here, but I can kinda get away with doing some of this because I'm not in line for the throne, but
Yeah.
I care about my community?"
Yeah. I can be free to use my strengths for my community in the way I see fit.
Absolutely.
And then at the end to have this sort of like self-authorship journey of, and now I am going to go do other things, having done these important things here.
Yeah.
And it felt narratively connected. I will say, she did work on the level as a fiery redhead for me. That was great. Mhm. And I do have a t-shirt of her. So
I
Yeah.
mean, like, it's like I said, she's appealing and, like, feel like there's kind of like there's a stereotype that exists of, like, the fiery redhead, but she felt like a real person. She felt like
Mhm.
a real living person and not just, like, somebody kind of making a weird fantasy or kind of doing some kind of weird wish fulfillment or something like that. Like, she felt very grounded and very, very real to me.
Yeah. To kind of get back to what Grace just said, that's very much Eowyn's story. I did this, and now I'm going to do that. And this could bring us to that Gary Canavan article where
Yes.
his experience with the students in his classroom, which I find hard to believe that every one of them is like, oh my God, she sold out, and no, she did this, and now she's going to do this, by choice.
Well, to
Oh
give a little
god.
bit of context for listeners, we were kind of looking at some different reviews, and I feel like from, like, the Tolkien nerd sort of perspective, this was generally pretty well liked and enjoyed by a lot of people in the Tolkien community. Like, they were kind of like, "Yeah, it's a strong movie," like, maybe I don't rewatch it every December like the Peter Jackson films or something like that, but well worth watching and a good time. And so we were looking at some different reviews, and we came upon one by Jerry Canavan, who was talking about his experience in teaching The Lord of the Rings, and in particularly teaching the character of Eowyn, and sort of relating back to this movie, which features Eowyn as the narrator, as the voiceover.
For a little bit of context to that too, Jerry Canavan is the head of the English department at Marquette University, which is, of course, where Tolkien's Lord of the Rings and Hobbit manuscripts are archived.
He starts the article, like, referencing that, which seemed like a strange appeal to authority to me personally, but
So I have interacted with Jerry at Robin Reed's researching Tolkien sessions, but I guess for broader context, can one of you kind of sum up like what he was sort of saying with regards to how his students felt about Eowyn and how they felt about Hera in relation to their experience reading Eowyn?
I wanna kind of work that backwards a little bit because
Yeah,
I, thought he was saying that students really appreciated Hera because of sort of this character arc that she gets to complete, and the way that she appeals to a modern audience and everything. And like, okay, I agree with that. And he was contrasting that to students' perceptions of Aon And that's where I ended up challenging things a little bit more. I think we'll get into what he says there and what he says he experienced as student reactions. I would challenge that part of the reason that students appreciate Hera's arc is that that piece of, and now I'm going to go do this, is explicitly stated on screen with her getting to be the central point of view character. And that doesn't happen as much for Eowyn in adaptation or necessarily in the books in ways that people pick up on, especially
Mm,
if they fail to read the appendices.
mm.
Yeah, I felt like he was making a kind of a leap. He was saying that students are disappointed in Eowyn, and I do not know if that is a universal thing, but it's it is a kind of a typical reaction. Oh, she went and became a wife instead of delving into it deeper, delving into what you guys have done here and talking about the queerness of the relation with Faramir and how beautiful that is that they fit together so well. But I think he kind of makes a leap into seeing the Eowyn of the War of the Rohirrim as saying, "Well, this could have been me. I could have gone off and done this." And I don't get
Mhm.
that
Which
from
is
that
crazy
Eowyn at
because
all.
she
He's reading that
did.
in.
Yeah,
Yes, she did these great things. Yeah.
yeah. That's not the vibe I got from her in her narration at all.
Right.
No.
Like, I come from a long line of badass bitches.
Yeah,
Yeah.
this is my ancestress.
That's what I was like, this is a story that did not get written down in written history, but it's been like the sense that I got was that this was passed down by the women orally, like
Yeah.
like, from mother to daughter to sister all the way down. And that's the story that I'm in. Like I'm continuing this story that
Mhm.
Hera was part of. And I feel like in her telling this story to us, the vibes that I got was like her like recognizing like she's sister in arms. Like this is where I'm from. She's doing the thing that I am doing too.
And that it's important for me, who is hearing this story, to recognize those echoes and threads
Yeah.
between the generations of shield maidens and not the men in the society.
Yeah.
Yes. Yes.
Yes.
And, like, the story beats are very similar between them.
Hmm.
Mhm.
Like, I kept seeing parallels between her and Eowyn, and I know, like, part of that is just I've had Eowyn on my fucking mind for months now, doing, like, a ridiculously deep dive, but you have the whole she's left behind as a steward where everyone goes to battle, except she does it way more willingly, uh, than Eowyn ends up doing because she actually uses her power as a steward to get everyone out and save everyone as
Yeah.
opposed to just, like, piecing the fuck out and going and doing what she wants to do, right? Like,
Yeah.
she has that big showdown with the big bad. She goes and does her own thing afterwards. Like there's this disconnect between her and her father figure where her father figure wants her to essentially be a peace weaver and not go out and fight. And like there's just they managed to pull all these parallels without making it exactly the same story. And I really appreciated that.
Mhm.
Same, same.
Yes. Another interesting thing. There are notes that neither of them have a mother, but Hera has a mother figure in her life.
Mm.
That's a
Mhm.
big difference for Eowyn. She is pretty isolated the way she is in Rohirrim society.
I have a relatively problematic sapphic read of Olwen and Hera, to be perfectly
I
honest.
mean,
Different
same.
generation, yeah. But
It's a little bit like, how old was she? Yeah, like how long has she been taking care of Hera? With
It's
this
a
work?
little Frodo and
well,
Sam to me.
yeah.
It's a little, yeah.
Mhm. Yeah.
I'm into it, but I'm like,
It's
again,
one of those things where I simultaneously hold a sapphic read and also simultaneously an Ace Arrow read of it, much like with
100%,
Frodo, right?
Yeah.
100%.
Well, and then I also, when there's a missing generation,
Mm,
I also then go, "Oh, well, what are the parts of that relationship we didn't get to see? Like, what relationship did Olwen and Hedda's mother have, for
mm,
instance?" There are a
mhm,
lot of paths toward that kind of connection and family constructed family, found family sort of
Mhm.
thing, and I will think about all of them.
Totally. I do feel like this movie, this story is a lot about how men are once again making really terrible choices and the women have to bear the consequences for them, and how the women meet that moment. And yeah, it's just once again, since I've had the patriarchy on my mind for for
Yeah.
my entire life, but particularly in the past few months. But in strong contrast to Olwen and Hera, I fucking hated Wolf.
Oh,
Mhm.
he's such an incel douchebag.
Uh-huh.
Fuck.
I just wanted him to fall into a volcano. I wanted him to be stomped on by a Mumakil. He's terrible. And I feel like that comes across very strongly. Like he's very much modeled as a terrible person.
Oh, he was one milady away
Yeah.
from being a full-on incel.
One fedora away.
Fuck my life. I saw some ex-boyfriends in him, and I did not like
Oh,
it.
oh no.
Hmm.
Here's the thing. He was so terrible that he was such a great villain in that.
Oh, yeah.
Because he wasn't a cool, sexy villain that, like, this was a villain that really was not queer coded. This was a villain that really was not like, oh, but he's misunderstood. Like, he really just was his full terrible self, and I wanted him to lose.
Yeah.
He made
Yeah.
George Clooney so upset over and over. Uh, I don't actually know what his second in command's name is, but I just kept calling him
It's like
George Clooney.
it's like
Uh,
hard, I
Oh,
think.
okay. I see where that's coming from.
Yeah.
Card.
Hot,
General
hot, hot.
Card.
Yeah.
I can only imagine that he was actually relieved when he was killed because he didn't have to deal with this whiny asshole's stupid bullshit anymore.
But it's yeah,
Uh,
it's that thing with Wolf that my emotions are sufficient justification for anything I should happen to want to do, you know, and I own all of you and can do what I like with you. And it's like, jeez, man.
Yeah.
I don't even know if he would characterize it as his emotions because, to those kind of men, anger is not an emotion. Anger is just logic.
It's
That's
yeah.
it's
true.
just
That's
justified.
true.
Yes. Uh-huh. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's
Hmm.
But yeah, oh, fuck, I hated him so much.
Yeah. There's definitely no, like, chance of, like, a Raylo situation happening here, which I very much
Great.
appreciate.
yeah. I mean, this film knew that he was the villain.
Yeah. Yeah, yeah.
Mm.
100%. And, like, one of the things that really struck me kind of emotionally was, like, seeing Hera, like, come to terms with my old friend is really terrible, and I kind of
Mhm.
felt like I could see, like, her grief and, like, her not, like, despair, but, like, just kind of, like, this sort of, like she had this, like, "I can't reach this person again," right? Like, she's like,
Mm.
"He's gone." Like, the person that I knew is gone, and she has quite a few different emotional arcs with the men in her life, but I felt like this one was, like, coming to terms with, like, that pain of sort of seeing how much her friend has changed, and also kind of, like, reflecting in that flashback a bit of, like, "Oh, but maybe the seed of who he is now was always there, and I just kinda didn't see it," you know? And that felt very, like I don't know, that felt very powerful and, like, relatable to me
Mhm.
as somebody who has known a couple of men who have gone down the rabbit hole of terrible masculinity and has had to kinda come to terms with, like, "Oh, that person that I knew is gone," or he was a lie to begin with, like, there was always, like, something
Mhm.
that just grew out of proportion, and so that was something that I really I don't know, I felt was very strong and really interesting because there was no, like, real, like, redemption that Hera was trying to, like, kind of bring him back really. It's, like, kind of like at a certain point, she was kind of like, "Okay, yep, this is who you are, and
You have made choices.
you've made choices." Yeah.
Like, this is both a really bad and a really good summary of this kind of relationship dynamic, is when a guy feels like he has been friend zoned, and
Mm.
then he's just
Mhm.
like, "You fucking bitch, I always hated you anyway," and then you block him.
Mhm.
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 Yeah.
Like, that's exactly what happens here. And, like, I have a pet theory that the real villain in this movie is romantic love.
Uh, Turns out the real villain was love the entire time? What? That's not how it's supposed to work.
Not all love, just this, like, patriarchal vision of romantic love.
Yes.
Mm.
Yes.
I actually wanna come back to a thing that I just said, and because I started thinking about it more, and I was like, "This movie knows that Wolf is the villain." And then I thought about my lovely Hedda t-shirt that I have from, I think it was Hot Topic or whatever, and I'm thinking and I'm sitting here and I'm going, "Wow, I would be so interested to see sort of like the retail numbers and things like that for merchandising on this and what sold and what didn't." Kind of apart from the fact that like the film didn't make enough money right away to be considered a giant hit or whatever. So it's like, well, obviously it's a flop or whatever. Because I swear there was more Hot Topic merchandise of Wolf than there was of Hedda.
Oh, yeah, because they thought that everyone was gonna wanna fuck him, right?
Yeah.
Because, quote, "Women want a bad boy that they can fix."
It presupposes fixability-ness.
Yeah.
Oh boy. Oh boy.
I would guess that the film did such a good job, at least among, my generation of folks and older who've sort of had a chance to see problematic men and go, "No, this is not worth it." Where I didn't see that phenomenon happen. I didn't see any, "Oh, we're gonna try to redeem him. Oh, he has a redemption arc." I think we might have seen that more if there were definitely sequels planned or
Hmm.
what have you, or if there were like, if his story were to continue alongside Hera's, but the way this film was written, it was good. Whether it was commercially viable for the male lead to be the terrible villain or not, I can't speak to, but I found it refreshing that he wasn't.
Yeah.
Mm.
That's a really good point. And I didn't like even see like in fandom like a lot of people going like a wolf is just, my little sad boy, my
My
little,
little cinnamon roll.
little
Yeah.
cinnamon
Oh,
sad, little cat boy who just needs a hug basically. It's like no, no, no.
And for our listeners, I am not shading the my adorable little Mew Mew cinnamon roll, whatever. I have done that. I do that.
Yeah,
Guilty.
this is a safe place. It's a safe place. We all do this.
But this man didn't deserve that, and I love that fandom really didn't give it to him.
No, he
mm.
didn't need it. He didn't need it at all.
No, I was gonna say, it kind of subverts this idea that it is extremely romantic for a man to, "I will destroy everything in order to have you." I mean, there's a line in a Grateful Dead song about, based on an old folk song, sort of like Venerio, but this man says, "If you're not gonna be my wife, I'm gonna destroy all the ladies in the land and burn all your cities to the ground." And she's, "Mm, nope, that does
Yeah.
not attract me to you."
No, that's not yeah,
Correct.
that's genocide, my dude. That's not
Yeah.
cute.
No, it doesn't make you, it doesn't, it's not romantic for you to do that. Back off.
Because I
Oof.
am one of the things that you're going to destroy in doing that.
Mhm.
Mhm.
Ugh. One of the shots that I really loved was seeing Wolf put on the crown of Rohan in the ruins of Edoras and the ruins of Meduseld, and it's just a really beautifully, like, framed shot, like, he can see himself in the mirror, and so you're actually just looking at the reflection of him wearing the crown the first time,
Mm.
and that's sort of like it's this illusory sort of thing where it's like you're not actually looking at him really, he's kind of looking at him, like sort of the image that he has of himself. And in the reality that he's actually sitting in, it's ashes, it's smoke and smoldering ashes. And it's sort of like, it's that mentality of like makes a really good villain is one of the characteristics that I find, like, really scary and, like, apocalyptic in a way is, like, this attitude of, "Well, as long as I'm the king, I'll be the king of this heap of ashes," you know?
Mm.
As long as I get to rule, that's what's important. And for Wolf, it's sort of like it doesn't really matter even if Hera is alive or not, as long as he has this crown, but he's ruling over a heap of ashes, that's fine with him. Like he's kind of gone into this point of no return, which I find kind of terrifying and a little too real in a lot of ways.
Yeah, I was about to say, given the focus of your research lately, I can definitely see why you would feel that way. It is giving some Peter Thiel.
And
Yeah.
some Peter Thiel vibes.
Mhm.
One of the things that I really love then is because Wolf weaponizes this idea of wanting to possess and marry Hedda. The weaponization of a wedding gown
Mm.
and her meeting him with that and taking control of that imagery, using the imagery and his thoughts about it to really stick it to him.
Oh
I
god,
liked that.
it was so good. So good. Like that moment when he asks like, "To whom are you pledged?" and she says, "Death." I went, "Fuck." I
Mhm.
was like,
Yes.
"Yes." That's so metal. It's so cool.
Mhm.
I love that because then you see that wedding dress in all the promos, and it kind of leads you to think of like, what's going on here? And in the movie itself, it's actually super effective and just a really, really great visual choice.
I get the symbolism. I think the symbolism is lovely, and I love how they foreshadowed it and all of that. I kept seeing Thorin taking off all of his fucking armor and then running out of the goddamn mountain in Battle of the Five Armies and how pissed off I was. Like thematically, no, it's great. He's thrown off the shackles of being the king and the dragon sickness and whatever, and he's back true to form and has found himself or whatever. But you're going into a fucking battle. Why would you take off all of your armor?
Well, at least for Hannah, you could see that she was wearing stuff underneath it. Like that's something that I was like, "Oh, okay,
Well,
she's
the
wearing."
pants, yes, but not on top because you can see her back.
Hmm.
Her entire back is exposed. Like she's titties out in this dress.
Fuck yeah. Fuck yeah.
At least they didn't put her in high heels.
Yeah, with her comically small shield.
Yeah, I was gonna say that was a weirdly small shield.
It looked like a kid's training shield that Olwen had. That
Yeah,
and I
maybe.
almost wondered if that's kind of what it was because like she talks about the history of it and all of
Mm,
that.
yeah.
It was a weird choice for someone who's done any amount of sword fighting.
But yeah, that's yeah.
It was for the vibes, man. It was for the metal moment of going out and doing a one-on-one battle in a wedding dress.
Oh, I fucking loved it.
Yeah.
I can put aside some of that, like, pedantic, "What the fuck? This doesn't make sense" shit if it hits right.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Totally.
I'll
Yeah,
still complain about it, but
yeah, it hit me just right. I was like, "Fuck yeah." And I like
and then it's on fire and shit, like,
yeah.
it's great.
Oh, man. Ah, so cool.
I did have one question about it, which was that being a white wedding dress a contextually accurate thing, or was that for the concurrent modern audiences to be able to contextualize it as a wedding dress?
Like, given that, like, white wedding dresses weren't a thing until Queen Victoria.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Mhm. Yeah.
but that's the same sort of thing where I'm like, "You know what? It worked because it worked for a
Vibes.
modern audience visually to get this particular idea across."
Yeah.
Fine.
I love that
Mhm.
it was all tattered and shit too, like, it was great.
Mhm.
Yeah.
She
Oh,
really
so
did just look
good.
like a wraith of death in, like, the best way.
Yeah. Yeah. I did kinda wanna go back slightly to talking about, like, love being the true villain of this story,
Mm.
but a different kind of love. I wanted to kinda get into the relationship between Helm and Hera, which has its own issues, I think. What did you guys make of Helm, I guess, as, like, as a character and the dynamic between him and Hera?
Big King Triton vibes.
Mm,
Yeah.
Probably because Hera is redheaded like Ariel, but I was getting
In the
huge,
funny makeup.
King Triton vibes.
yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
I do love what they did with Helm, though. I've always found the ambiguity about whether Helm was actually a wraith and dead or not to be a really compelling part of his story.
Yeah.
and just the he died standing, and I love they hit that so well.
Yeah. I thought that that was handled so beautifully. Like, it's one of those, like, things where it's, like, in an oral folktale, like, this legend, he died standing and he, like or, like, he was a wraith, like, haunting and, like,
Mhm.
tearing people apart with his bare hands and stuff like that. You're like, "How can that translate really onto screen?" I thought that they did a great job with it. Like, I was writing in my notes, I was like, "Ghost Helm, this is awesome." I wrote down Helmsicle at the end.
Oh, no. I think that they hit the right emotional beat with the one punch as well,
Yeah,
because,
Mm,
like, that line he has when he was just like, "I only hit him once." Like,
yeah.
that's exactly what someone would say, and in that intonation, like, just completely disbelieving that that actually happened, right? Like,
Mhm.
I think they did a really good job of, like, making him kind of overbearing and patriarchal, but, like, I didn't hate him.
Mm.
yeah.
It's a very similar line to what they walked with Theoden, right? And, like, they
Hmm,
get a similar kind of, redemption moment where they're like, "I was wrong, you're strong enough to do this," that sort of thing, and I thought it was a good parallel and also just really well done.
Mhm.
yeah, I always love an apology from a dad to a daughter being like, "You know what? I was wrong." I'm like, yeah, I always
Yeah.
appreciate that.
That I should have listened to you.
Yeah,
Mhm.
yeah. I also like there was a really beautiful visual. I really felt the emotionality of Hannah at Helm's side when he was in a coma and she sort of lets like her grief over her everybody that she's lost already. And like I felt like what she kind of says to Helm kind of felt like a like calling him back being like, I'm still here basically. Like I know my brothers are dead. I know your sons are dead. I know that you're kind of in this, like, coma of despair, basically, but come, like, see me. I'm here. Like, I'm here at your side still. And, yeah, I just felt like that was, like, such a poignant moment for me. I felt like that was a really strong moment.
There was this element for me as I was watching where it's like, okay, so Helm is dying. Hedda's brothers are dead. She's the only one that survives. She carries on the line, but it did not resolve with her having to carry on a line through bearing children.
Mm,
And for her to be able to be a leader in her own right and then set the terms of her own story and not sort of be pressed into service for procreation and instead to let a crown pass to a near relative and sort of begin a new dynasty.
Yeah,
dynasty, yeah, legacy, yeah,
Yeah, I felt like that did sort of turn the expected script on its head because I'm so used to it's like, "Oh, well, all the men are gone. We have the girl, and then she'll do a thing, and then she'll repopulate the world from that because she gets to be an incubator for the next generation and continuing." And like, mhm, mm, great. This did not do that, and I loved that.
yeah.
Mm.
Yeah,
I did just to touch on the racism issue. I did
Oh,
enjoy that
yeah,
the person who started the next line, not blonde and blue-eyed.
yeah, that's very, very true. Yeah, Freyalof, who's is he, like, I guess, the ancestor of Theoden and
I
all
think
them?
He
so.
would have to be.
Yeah,
He was the first of the second line of kings, is what
Okay,
they
yeah.
s
okay.
Like
yeah,
sister son, so yeah,
yeah. Because there's that whole, like, relationship with sister sons and,
Yes,
mhm,
yes,
yeah,
yes.
early medieval England.
Mhm.
yeah.
Yeah,
It's a big thing. Yeah.
and he's originally from Gondor, right? Or, like, raised in Gondor or something?
A lot of the Rohirric kings were fostered in
Or
Gondor for at least a
fostered,
little
okay.
bit, yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Yeah,
okay.
and that's a big medieval thing too, exchanging children to be raised in each other's courts, partly to increase their understanding of the world, but also partly as hostages in a way.
Yeah, yeah.
Mhm.
Hostage/fosterage is a
Friendly hostages.
Yeah. Well, that's what fosterage means, right? Friendly hostages.
Portmanteau.
That's what that's short for.
I think we should touch a little bit more on the race and racism issues just because too frequently we as a society don't do a good job of calling those out in Tolkienian spaces.
Mhm.
Yeah, and, like, that is one of the reasons why I find the praise for Wolf being a completely irredeemable character, like, yes, it's true, and I'm glad that he's not queer coded and people aren't cinnamon rolling him, but also, like, he's a person of color.
Mm,
He's a mixed race person.
mm.
That's not great.
Yeah,
Yeah.
doesn't feel great.
Mhm.
I did notice, like, there was kind of, like, a range of skin tones, I guess, in the Dunlendings,
Yeah.
and I do think they kinda got around some of that by making a lot of them wear skull masks and other
Mm,
headgear, and to make it a little bit more difficult to kind of discern, but
to dehumanize them.
yeah, it's very cool looking for sure, but it does kind of mask a little bit where the reality where it's like, "Oh, yeah, like, Wolf is pretty clearly probably biracial or something like that," and it's like, I feel like there could be a lot of more diversity in the Dunlendings themselves in contrast to what we have seen in them in the Peter Jackson films, right? But I feel like I don't think you guys did quite the thing here in choosing to do that.
Janet, you would have the answer to this. Freka, he purely Dunlending, or is that house mixed?
Yeah, I think the no, let me.
I mean, like, either way, he's definitely depicted in this as
Yeah,
being
Helm
very
Helm
other.
calls Freka Dunlending,
Yeah.
Mhm.
although that may be the name calling somebody by the name of their kingdom.
Mhm.
But there is something in here about Freka, who claimed descent from King Freowine, though he had, men said, much Dunlendish blood and was dark-haired.
Mm.
So yes, casting Freka as mixed race to begin with, and then his son Wolf, of course, carrying that on.
Yeah, I was pulling that knowledge from playing Lord of the Rings online, because when you get into that part of Rohan, there are, like, mixed race houses of Rohirrim and Dunlending, houses, and it's interesting how they treat that in the game, but yeah.
Yeah, it could have been worse, I think,
Mm.
but
Yeah.
kind of it is kind of swept under the rug. It's not really paid attention to. Yeah,
It's sort of like similarly with the Southrons that we see, the mercenaries that we see are similar, obviously in design to what we see in the Peter Jackson films, and yeah, that's not great either.
Yeah, to a
mhm,
certain extent, it's set in the same universe, right? So
Right.
I
yeah,
understand that kind of carrying over, but also it was already not super great in the early 2000s. And, it's as much as it pains me to fucking say this, it's 20 years later, guys.
Yeah.
Like,
Mhm.
It's extra not great.
yeah,
yeah.
Yeah.
yeah. If there was something about this story that would put me on the side of not doing this lovely little self-contained story, it is that inherent racial difficulty in it.
Mhm.
But that's something it's inherent to Tolkien's writing, right? Like,
Mm.
Yeah, you
unless
know,
you're actively working against it, it's really easy to fall into that because the writing itself kind of lends itself to that 'cause of his
yeah.
whole.
I mean, it might have been different if all of the Rohirrim were cast as these wonderful, fantastic, morally upstanding, marvelous people, and all of the Dunlendings were cast as practically orcs. You can't distinguish them, and it's not quite that way. So
Yeah, that's for sure, but I do feel like it does kind of gets into, like, these sort of broad, homogenous sort of, I don't know, depictions, which is also inherent to Tolkien because that's how he describes the Rohirrim,
yeah,
that's how
yeah,
he describes the Dunlendings, and so it's
and,
sort of
and,
like
and it might be that because I have steeped in Tolkien, I'm bringing to my viewing of the film the knowledge that when the Dunlendings are conquered, they like, oh my God, the Strawheads are going to eat us. Oh, actually, they're not that horrible. So you're seeing that from the other side
Mm.
Mhm,
of the equation there.
mhm.
So don't know exactly where I'm trying to go with that, except that Tolkien saw these things, but he couldn't solve them.
He couldn't always get
No.
out of his own way with it
Yeah.
too, but there is observation, yeah.
Hmm.
I think for me, I really did not perceive Wolf as a person of color,
Hmm.
because when I look at this character, this pretty pasty dude with long hair reads to me as every problematic white man I've ever known.
As a basement dwelling incel.
No, just like the ones that are just out there on the street
I mean,
and
maybe he
feel
just hasn't washed his
No.
hair in a while.
yeah, they just feel emboldened to say things that, wow, those were inside thoughts, friend. So, that's something that I have to go back and think about too, is that, like, he is, at least in the context of Middle Earth, a biracial
Hmm.
character and all of that, even though I perceived him as being someone who would be afforded the privileges of whiteness in my society.
I was gonna
Right.
say
That's not necessarily the case in Middle Earth at
I
this
mean, is his
time.
coloring any different from Aragorn's?
I was gonna
No.
say he could be passing very easily here, for sure. Or he could be he could be like, "Oh, he's Italian," or something like that, you
Exactly, in the
know?
primary world, like, the construction of whiteness today, there are people who we now are like, "Oh, yes, this person is white," that 2 generations back, their very same complected ancestors were not considered to be worthy of this whiteness, and
He's Italian.
yeah,
Mhm.
So, yeah.
and the white supremacy that our society is based in encourages people to work toward that conceptualization of whiteness that one can be part of, which being really, really set on marrying a girl that you knew in childhood who is super light skinned and part of that blue eyed, blonde haired sort of family and society is complicated.
Yeah, whose father throws your nationality out as an insult?
Yeah,
Yeah. Yeah.
yeah.
No, I hadn't looked at it
Ugh.
from that angle, but yeah.
Ugh.
Like,
Yeah.
I think it's appropriately complex because there are complexities, and I just need to do more thinking about the parallels and then differences between this and the primary world, and the choices that we make in the primary world in telling this story.
Yeah, I do think Freka dying so early helps with reading him as just a generic sad boy, like,
Hmm.
just just like a generic white, sad incel dude, because, like, Freka is noticeably different than the rest of the Rohirrim that we see at that point. He's in a completely different cultural costume. Like, he is a very different anime archetype as well. Like, he is, I don't know what it's called, but you know, the short dude who moves too much when he talks? That's what this guy is,
Mm.
which is very different from like the rest of the Rohirrim are kind of that like more, Sailor Moony kind of like hero
Mhm.
character
Mhm.
design. And
Mhm.
the fact that he is taken out within the first 10 minutes of this movie really like kind of closes the door on Wolf's like cultural heritage in some
Yeah.
ways, because like you can almost read him becoming the leader of the Hillmen as a Galadriel kind of colonization read. You could definitely do
Totally
that if you're not taking into account that he is to some extent
a part of
the
that.
also, yeah,
Yeah.
exactly.
Yeah.
Well, and I think Janet's point about how in some I would argue some of, like, the lesser known moments of Tolkien's writing, we get glimpses of negative perspectives held on the other side of our point of view characters, which I think then also points to nationalism being problematized as well, and I think that is also interesting in how we treat it in the primary world today
Mhm.
and how we tell stories, because
Mhm.
there have been a lot of issues caused by the idea of blind nationalism that should then result in the eradication of a people.
Yeah.
Ugh. Anyway,
Yeah.
yeah. Something that I guess related to Wolf, and it kinda gets into it a little bit, like, Freka does die very, very quickly, but the rest of the timeline of the movie actually extends out pretty far, and I feel like it gives a lot of weight to especially the ending that is the siege at Helm's Deep. Like, it felt like a long time. Like, it felt like time had passed in between
Yeah.
Wolf amassing his army and also Wolf arriving and everybody starving and Ghost Helm appearing. Like, I felt like the passing of time was something that I felt without it being like, "Oh god, this movie is dragging on forever." It was like I could feel, like, the weight of time. And Janet, I think that this was something that you had possibly suggested or pushed? Is that
Well,
right?
yeah, I wanted to make sure that they took into account the timeline in the story. We know that the timeline in the Lord of the Rings was shortened between the time, yeah, yeah, which, yeah. But I felt it really, in order to be realistic, Wolf had to have time to go back and brood and brood and brood on this thing and amass this army and just keep reinforcing his own anger and hatred in order for this to make sense.
Hmm.
Mhm.
Yeah, okay, there's striking while the iron is hot and immediate revenge and all that, but that isn't this story. This is a story of long plotted revenge. This is a story of Wolf waiting till he's strong enough because he knows he needs to be really strong to take on Helm Hammerhand. He needs to have forces and alliances that Helm does not expect him to have. So I'm glad that they went with the time span that's actually in that little snippet of story we get.
Yeah, like, this is a story about grudges, right?
Yes.
And, like and brooding over wounds and, like, just on both sides, I guess, like, Helm's sort of stubbornness, I think, sort of stubbornness is feels like a really light way to say it, but it's sort of like his obstinacy is sort of like another reflection of, that holding a grudge and that kind of holding on to a degree of bitterness.
Yeah. Yeah, so we do see an interesting contrast in this movie between immediate, passionate reaction, the punch, the killing, the banishment,
Mhm.
and the other side, this long brooding and nursing of an anger.
Yeah, and this long siege where where Ghost Helm starts taking out the army one by one, and you're like,
And that goes on long enough to
it
be
goes on a
noticed.
long time to be noticed and to, like, build up a collective fear and collective, like
Yeah.
That's really how I want to be perceived. Like, that's fucking goals.
The longer I contemplate you, the more fearful
the
I
more
am.
fearful I become, yeah.
Yeah,
You
right.
just want to as you wanna be perceived as, like, a ghost who will rip you apart in the night.
Yeah, just like this this nameless fear, like, around the camp, like, that's fucking power.
Yeah, that is. Now there was something else that went on a long time that I know Alicia wanted to talk about.
Oh, man, I guess we gotta get into it, you guys. It's time. It's time.
So the tentacle porn monster.
Let's just get it right out there.
The
Yeah,
hentai. Oh, no.
For our listeners to create a visual. It was beautiful watching Janet just break up laughing at that. Beautiful.
it is kind of related to what we were just talking about, though, because this whole, like, interlude with the tentacle porn monster is one of the ways in which the time passage is being shown.
It
It goes on
is.
so long. It's going so long.
It
I
does. It
don't
does. I
Yeah.
mean, to lead up to it, you can see why they had to have something there. They had to have
Mm.
something to show passage of time. They had to show the Mumak, coming into that area. They had to have something that would separate Hera from her companions so that she could be captured by Targ. But did it have to be a tentacle porn monster?
Did it have to did it have to be
A tentacle porn monster
Did it have to be hentai that
with a bush on top of it.
Yeah,
yeah, with a tree on top of it. It's
I
like an
know.
island, right?
Yeah,
Yes.
are they
Yeah.
pulling in something from that Festito poem of Tolkien's or
Oh,
something?
yeah.
Oh, sure.
Pascatalon. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
So, okay, I have thoughts about the tentacle porn monster.
Drop them.
We
Yeah,
knew you would.
and I have facts about the tentacle
Oh, yeah.
porn
Drop
monster.
drop us some knowledge. Drop us
Okay,
some
so, like,
knowledge.
first of all, tentacle porn monster, canonical in the Peter Jackson, Tolkien universe,
Mhm.
Correct.
as seen
The
in The
Watcher in
Watcher
the
in the
Water.
Water. I am so fucking glad if that was the depiction of what The Watcher in the Water was going to look like when it fully surfaced, that we did not see that in the live action movies, because the Georgia O'Keefeness of this thing's mouth really disturbed me.
I don't know how
Would
anybody could
it?
not see it as anything other than a
Vagina
pussy.
dentata? Yeah.
Vagina dentata. I was just like, I was uncomfortable with how much. I was like,
Is this
this
some comment on the overall theme of the
yeah,
movie?
exactly. I was like, what is this trying to say? I hope this doesn't awaken anything in me.
Going back to Zelda, because it's half of my life, there are things in Zelda that mimic this creature. Like, they're like octopod things with like rocks or trees or whatever growing on their heads. And like, I had never thought that it might be a cultural reference that I wasn't getting, but I think more and more now that it is a cultural reference that I just don't know what it is.
Like some kind of legendary like folklore or something? Yeah.
Yeah, and I will 100% say that I can't talk about this octopod with thing on its head as like what that could potentially mean, although I am now incredibly curious about it. However, the tentacle porn aspect of this I can talk about because I went to art school. And when you take an art history class, that is something that comes up. As well as I'm a millennial and I grew up on the internet and I have seen things
We've
that I
seen
probably
so many
shouldn't
things.
have seen at that point in my life. But
We've
like,
all
so
seen so many things.
right. So like, erotic tentacle art is a thing in Japan and has historically been a thing in Japan since like the 1700s, like the late
Yeah.
1700s. You start getting woodblock prints of tentacle erotica. And I recently learned when I was looking up the exact date of it, because I knew it was the 1700s, but I didn't know exactly when. It dates back to 1781, apparently. In the Wikipedia article, they go into kind of like why this has continued to persist in Japanese culture. And I think this is very interesting, although it is not directly tied to this movie at all. You're getting this fact anyway, because I had to read it. Part of the reason why it persists in Japanese culture is because of World War II. When the Allies were occupying Japan, they put into place a bunch of censorship laws. And what's a good way around not being able to depict genitals? Tentacles.
Mhm.
So, like, there is a quote in here
Wow.
that says, "It was illegal to create a sensual scene in bed. I thought I should do something to avoid drawing such as a normal sensual scene, so I just created a creature. His tentacle is not a penis as a pretext. I could say, as an excuse, this is not a penis. This is just part of the creature. You know, the creatures, they don't have a gender. A creature is a creature, so it is not obscene, not illegal." That is a Toshio Maeda. I think that it is beautiful that this historic art form has been kept in context because fuck these white people
Because
who
these white folks
who are
can't handle
occupying our country. We're gonna fight back with tentacle
with
porn.
tentacles.
Mhm.
It is sending me.
The radical roots of it.
Yeah, because it's a beast. It's a creature. It's not illegal. It's not wrong or obscene. And I'm like, what planet are you from? Where this is not obscene?
I love that this is such a deeply ingrained part of Japanese culture. I love how fucking weird it is to Western people to like come across it. And I did find it strange to see in a Tolkien
I was
adaptation.
gonna say, and now it's canon in
Yeah,
Tolkien adaptation.
and I feel so bad for that Momak because he did not like anything
He
that was
did not like
happening.
any part of it. That was what was distressing me.
So also part of the whole historic tentacle thing is that it is non-consensual. Like that is
Oh,
part of the
Yeah.
trope. And you nailed it with it consuming this Momak because he looked real upset the whole
he was
time.
not happy about it at all.
I was hoping he was dead by a certain point.
I hope so too, because I was like, this is distressing.
Yes.
The fear that they managed to put into that thing's eyes,
I
it
know.
was very distressing.
I was like as an animal lover, I am kind of like, I don't know if I can handle this. Maybe maybe I need to take a moment.
So this is the part we fast forwarded through in the rewatching.
I was just about to say, I'm curious to like what does the dog die have to say about
Oh
this
my
film.
god, yes, exactly.
If you don't know, there is a website called Does the Dog Die? I believe it's doesthedogdie.com. And it
Yes.
literally just lists out problematic things that happen in
It's
like
trigger
shows
warnings.
and
It's trigger warnings and content warnings for mostly films, but they're starting to do books and TV shows as well. And I rely on it heavily.
That is actually one of the things that keeps me from rewatching this film a lot, is that there are things when people and things die that make me sad, and
They make me sad.
and I have too many feelings. But
yeah.
Yeah, it's rather dark.
coming back to the tentacle porn monster,
Tentacle porn.
I'm just doing a little bit of research right now, and I am fascinated and delighted to find, but there is a sculpture, like a polystone sculpture of the Watcher in the Water,
Oh,
as depicted from the Lord of the Rings movies. The sculptor being Tiger Kang, who works for Weta Workshop, and I can see some other things where like other Weta Workshop projects that are non-Middle Earth affiliated that she's worked on as well. But it is fascinating to me that this may have actually gone back to earlier conceptualizations from the Lord of the Rings films that weren't fully put on screen, because the things that echo are still like they're still there. But yeah, that is
Yeah, yeah. No, I can definitely see that. I remember its mouth, right? But I don't
mhm.
remember like much anything else because it's like a really dark scene. But yeah, it definitely has the like frilly things around its head. Its mouth doesn't look nearly as vaginal though.
No,
that's true.
it does
And
not.
its little teethy grippers are also still, and so I think it's fascinating that as that gets pulled into an animated presentation, that we get more of those historical tropes
Hmm.
added on too, in ways that I don't know if Western audiences are always going to pick up on, but fascinating.
Or prepared for, in my case.
Correct.
Yeah, like if you didn't know, that would have been so surprising. I mean, like they show the tentacle monster in the preview, right? Like in the
Mhm.
trailer for it, like
Mhm.
you see the tentacle monster so you know it's coming. And like when she ran into the woods and into that swamp and threw that spear at that island, I was like, that's where the tentacle monster's coming from. I know this
Yeah,
from Zelda.
I
Yeah.
yeah, I was anticipating. I was like, "Oh, okay, yeah, this is where it comes in." But I was not anticipating the vagina dentata of it quite that much.
Yeah.
But dear listeners, that means that if you perceived it too and you thought you were alone, you're not.
I am reminded of the original character design for the mouth of Sauron. They had his mouth switched vertically, and then they realized, no,
Oh.
that's too much. Let's just make mouth very big instead of vulva-esque.
My mouth just dropped open into a shape that I didn't actually like as we were discussing that.
I did not know that either.
I have watched the commentary too many times.
I was gonna
Too
say,
many
I have
times.
not watched that particular commentary enough, apparently. I will remedy that. Oh my goodness. Well, is there anything else after that? That's like, how can we come back from
How
this?
can we top
How can
that?
we talk about further about this?
I do have one thing that I did really enjoy that just back in the scenes with Helm and as Hera is going out into the snow, we get this shot that I've seen in one other place that's clearly pulled from, I think, the appendices. Janet, correct me if I'm wrong, but where the orcs are going through the bodies and looking for rings.
Hmm.
The other place I've seen that adaptationally is in the fan film Born of Hope.
Was it
Ah.
Born of Hope or was it Hunt for Gollum?
No, we watched them in the same night. I think it was Born of Hope because the orcs like raid a village and
Yeah,
then
yeah.
Yes. Yes.
Arathorn comes upon them counting the rings and they're puzzled as to why they're doing it. It's just that, the Dark Lord says they need to. And so I'm curious if we'll see that in future adaptations that they're considering, like the big budget Hunt for Gollum one. But it's interesting to me that it's a piece that clearly sticks out from I assume, the appendices as people are looking to adapt this and tie in that Sauron is already moving in this space.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm trying to remember, and again, I cannot quote from what I wrote in response
Mhm.
to it, but I know I looked at this and both Sauron and Saruman were trying to find any news of the ring that they could find, kind of at cross purposes. Saruman kind of like sneakily doing this on his own.
Mhm.
So it fits that this would be happening at that time.
Yeah.
This specific thing, this specific way of showing it, yeah, it's interesting that it would be the same in two different adaptations. It makes sense to show it that way. It's a clever way to do it. But I don't think anything specifically like that is shown in the appendices anywhere. Just the fact that both Sauron and Saruman were trying to track down what happened to the ring
Yeah.
without saying we're looking for a particular ring.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Collecting rings.
Bring them all to me. And
Bring
yeah.
them all. Ugh.
I do wonder if that is an homage to Born of Hope then.
I do
Ah,
wonder,
That'd be
yeah.
pretty cute. Yeah.
yeah.
So, like, not only is it a cameo for Dominic Monaghan and Billy Boyd, but
Yes.
also potentially a shout out to Born of Hope. That would be great.
That would be lovely. Yeah, I was so delighted when I saw their names as the orcs.
Hmm.
I was like, "Oh, that's so great."
That's,
So,
yeah.
I'd forgotten that, yeah.
anything else that really kinda stood out to you? Or I guess, Janet, like, again, no specifics or getting too into it, but, like, I'd love to know what really, like, delighted you from, like, a fan scholar perspective, and what perhaps disappointed you in some of the story choices? Like, just watching it as, like, a fan scholar, I
As a
guess.
fan, yeah.
Yeah.
As a fan, I loved seeing this story fleshed out. I loved seeing a woman get a logical part. I mean, it did not make sense
Yeah.
for
Mm.
her to be what she was, to be a shield maiden, to have shield maiden training, to have another shield maiden in her life. It all made sense. It didn't feel like anything was being forced into this story to me. So I was quite willing to let it carry me along. And they played around with a bit of chronology and a bit of where things happened here and there, but it wasn't so much so that it changed the beats of the story. Like we witnessed the one son's death, which Helm actually never heard. He never heard how his second son died. Here
Yeah.
you got it very graphically right in
Yeah.
front of him. Well, it's not exactly how it was told in the appendix, but it reinforces what's going on in the story. So I was pleased to see that strong, thoughtful kind of storytelling going on. One thing that bothered me was the amount of paper. This is an oral culture.
Yeah.
Yeah, I can get why they did it. You need to be able to telegraph the treachery of Lord Thorn, and
Mm.
an easy way to do that is the impression from his signet ring in wax. But it just doesn't fit the oral culture. And what particularly bothered me was poor little Leaf and all these pieces of paper he's
Oh,
dealing with.
yeah,
And no, if you're a Scop in that culture, you should be priding yourself on your memory. This should all be in his head. Those sigils should immediately call up the names that go with them. So
yeah.
that bothered me. I mean, it doesn't affect the story, but it was something that kicked me out of my suspension of disbelief here and there.
Mhm.
That's totally fair. And yeah, that's such a good point about the sculpt because like we sort of see Leaf, I guess I made perhaps at the beginning of his journey, but it's like he would be as a fully trained sculpt, he would be able to know who these people are and their fathers and their mothers. He would know the stories of all of these people, like from
Yeah.
generations back.
He would, yes, he would be the oral repository of these agreements. He would just tell me what the agreement is.
He'd be able to tell you what the agreement was. Absolutely. Yeah.
Wouldn't need to be on a piece of paper. Yeah.
Yeah.
I can't believe this is the first time we've actually mentioned Leaf, but I love that little androgynous character so
I
much.
know. He
Like,
was great.
yeah, I loved him so much. He was definitely like a Pippin mixed with a Sam,
Yeah.
Mm,
Yeah.
but just
yeah.
like really just non-binary, just like
Yeah.
real gender neutral.
Totally. Totally.
Mhm.
Well, yeah, like, what did you think of Hera's other relationships? Like, we've touched a little bit on Olwen,
Mm,
and I was really struck by the relationship between her and Hama, one of the little soft boy Hama who is playing his little lute and goes to war as well. And I thought that that was a really lovely like portrayal of what we hear about the Rohirrim is that like, they're singers, they're singing as they go to war. And I kind of love that, him being a little lute player doesn't take away from his manly
mhm,
warriorness, really. I feel like that was, like, the artifact that was really important to so
mhm,
many being like, "This is a symbol of, like, our songs, our heritage, and our culture. These are really important to us." But, yeah, like, one of the really striking things besides the very graphic death that he suffers, unfortunately, is, when he's riding his horse as they're fleeing Edoras, and the riders are coming up behind him, and his poor horse just she's an old lady, and she just can't keep up, and so he falls further and further behind, and finally he stops, and she can't go on, and he gets off and starts comforting her, and, oh my goodness, I'm tearing up a little bit because,
That
again,
is the reason I can't rewatch this movie very often.
I mean, like, we don't see anything that happened to them, thank goodness, but it's just, like, this really, really tender moment of the Rohirrim love their horses. It was just a really beautiful moment of him, like, comforting her and being like, "You did great, old girl. It's okay," even as this inevitable thing is coming up behind him. Oh, yeah,
Absolutely
yeah,
heartbreaking. I
totally.
do
yeah,
like that they showed that the horse isn't just like a car and that
Yeah.
eventually
Yes.
yeah.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Ugh,
yeah. It's a decaying, yes. It's, yeah, her relationships with both of her brothers, I thought, were well handled. Yeah, and I think we get a hint with the older brother that he may have been fostered out and was coming back. That maybe she didn't see him as much growing up as she would have liked to.
that's a really good point.
Yeah.
There's definitely a little bit more distance between her and him.
He's got a bit of that Gondorian polish. You know?
Ugh, hanging out with Freyaloff, I guess.
Yeah.
One of my thoughts in all of this is that I think sort of quite apart from you being the Tolkien expert on this, the work that you and Leslie Donovan did in editing Perilous and Fair
Mm,
and the way that that has had an impact on Tolkien scholarship and the reception of female characters in Tolkien, I think had an impact on how people are prepared to talk about female characters in this
mhm,
space and what we are able to see on our screens because the idea of these characters is more firmly explored and complicated and there are archetypes to be able to unpack and all of that work
mhm,
even though this is a very finish sort of space and not the scholarly space I think that that has had a tremendous impact, and so I want to thank you for the work that you and all the contributors to that volume have done.
Oh, yeah. Well, thank you. I mean, yeah, I really feel that Hera comes out of this back study of Eowyn that
Yeah.
some people did. That, these really deep dives into Eowyn that Perilous and Fair pushed forward and made more available, and that have been followed up. I mean, you guys with your work on her have just been amazing too. So made me rethink things about
Blushing,
her.
blushing.
But
Yeah.
yeah, but we wouldn't have, I don't think we'd have Heron exactly the way we do if there hadn't been people thinking hard about Eowyn and what she means, and really, building on what Tolkien gave us and saying, well, what this means to me is, what this does
Yes.
for me is, yeah.
That's a really beautifully said, and I think that's a really kind of a beautiful way to wrap things up. I feel like this film is a really lovely addition to Tolkien adaptations and continuing, I think, the story of of what thinking about like Eowyn and thinking about her legacy in the book and in the films and sort of bringing it to another generation of folks is I feel like it's a really worthy addition to all that.
I hope that this is an adaptation that continues to have a lot of legs long after its theatrical release time frame, and that we get to keep coming back to it again and again and again, because I think the way it's done, it's able to fit in to our conceptualization of Middle Earth in a way that isn't particularly based in like, oh, that's definitely a 2004 thing.
Mm,
So I think that's gonna be lovely.
yeah. It's got some depth
Yeah,
to it. It's got some things to be discovered in it.
Yeah. Janet,
absolutely.
are there any other things that you wanted to make sure that you shared with us about the film, or any upcoming projects that you'd like to make sure to plug?
Mm. Well, just, if you haven't seen it yet, it is worth seeing. So, go out and see it. It is long though, so make sure to plan your breaks and your snacks. And you can probably skip through the hentai part if you really want to. But I guess the next thing coming up on my schedule, besides myth lore and the proceedings of the OMS that we just had, is there has been a Tolkien area at the National Popular Culture Association conference for several years that Robin Reed ran. I co-did it last year with Bianca Peronio. She's going to take over the national, and I'm going to start up a similar area at Southwest Texas Pop Culture, and that is February in Albuquerque. And we are just about to put out the calls for papers. So
Oh, right
think
on.
about that. Albuquerque in February. Yeah, well, we might get a little dusting of snow
Pretty
here and there.
pleasant, actually.
It is
Yeah.
usually quite
Albuquerque is
pleasant.
lovely.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Better than Albuquerque in August.
Oh yeah. I've been there
It's
both
dry
times
heat. It's
before.
It's
fine.
a dry heat.
Well, yes. And right now it's like 86% humidity here. So, boy,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. Oof. Oof.
But yes, and thank you for the opportunity to natter on with you guys. And
Yes, thank you so much for coming on and talking to us about it. It's extremely cool. Like Alicia said, being able to see your name in the credits is very, very cool because then
oh, yeah,
we
I
can
get a
all go
little,
like,
a
"Oh
little
my
like,
gosh, I
yeah,
know
I get
that
a little
person."
power boost every time somebody cheers my name at these things.
Ah, yeah, yeah. Well, awesome. Well, thank you so much again, Janet, and
This has been lovely.
this has been a wonderful
Thank
conversation.
you so much.
Thank you.
Alicia, do you wanna take us out?
Sure thing. All right, please leave us a rating and review. You can find us on Apple Podcasts, on YouTube, on Spotify. We're basically wherever you listen to podcasts. Please like, share, and subscribe on platforms that will allow you to do that. You can also stream episodes directly on Zencaster. That is zencaster.com/queer lodgings, a Tolkien podcast with hyphens in between all of those words. You can also find us at our website at queerlodgings.com, where we have show notes, resources, transcripts. We have merch there as well. We're
Yay.
also on so many social medias. We're on Facebook, we're on Blue Sky, Technically, we're on Twitter, but we only post episode updates on there because fuck Twitter.
Fuck Elon.
If you have any feedback you want to give us, you can give it to us on social media. You can email us at queerlodgingspodcast@gmail.com, or you can join our Discord. We do not have a custom Discord server link yet, but we do post about it on our social media, and there is a link on our website to join our Discord. We would love to see you there. Thank you so much.
Yay. Thank you so much, everybody. Bye.
Okay.
Thanks, everyone.
Bye.
And if I'm allowed
Bye.
to say, we have a merch plug from one Janet Brennan Croft,
Oh,
who owns at least one, if not two, of our Fueled by Spite stickers.
oh
So
shit.
you
Yeah.
too can own one and be approaching as cool as Janet is.
Amazing.
All righty.
For this especially, if like it was just like I was just like reacting basically and being like, okay, I want to make sure that this is in there. But oh my god, I'm so excited and I'm so scared about the tentacle porn. I'm like,
No, like I was looking up the dates, right? Because I knew it was the 1700s, but I wanted to get like an actual date. And
oh
in
yeah,
so doing, I read the Wikipedia page for it, and I'm about to drop a fucking bomb that is so hilarious.
oh my god,
great.
oh my god,
And Leah, it is also really relevant to your research.
oh shit, amazing.